You're absolutely right.
So it is recording now. Righteous. All right, what time do we have here? All right, yeah, perfect. We can definitely get started. All right, so I guess thanks to everyone who came out today. My name is Zach Leslie. I am the Public Relations Coordinator for the All-Campus Election Commission. And what we do as ACEC is we facilitate the elections on campus with MSA, GAPSA, the Carlson D Board, as well as University Senate. So facilitate those elections, enforce the rules, define what the rules are, as well as do general marketing for the election itself. And so with that, I'll pass along to you, Kyle, and you can give your general opening statements, touch on like the important parts of the policies that you want to cover.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Zach. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Kyle, and I'm a 2L at the law school here. And you guys. Anyway, I'm very excited to talk to you a little bit about my candidacy for GAPSA and tell you what I'd like to plan for the future. But first, I have to admit to you that I never thought that I would run for the president of GAPSA. And I was a student here as an undergrad, involved very much in MSA, the undergraduate student government. And I remember the way people talked about GAPSA, and they used to kind of say disparaging things about it, that its reputation wasn't very good, it's very dysfunctional. And I remember thinking as an executive at MSA, one that has the opposite of that, essentially, that I would never want to associate my name with the organization. But I actually am really excited about GAPSA's future, mostly because of the referendum that students will be voting on this year. And so I'd like to tell you a little bit about why I think this is a great opportunity for GAPSA. First, as many of you may know, GAPSA has this poor reputation for being dysfunctional, and it has had accusations thrown at it, some of which were proven to be false, and people still criticize the organization for past actions of its leadership and its members. And I think we can liken a lot of the problems that GAPSA faces to what Congress, our own Congress in the country faces. Essentially, you can say that graduate and professional students are different political parties. They have very different interests sometimes they agree on things, but sometimes they have very different interests, or they value some concern more than another concern. Sometimes there are issues that graduate students care deeply about, but professional students are unaffected by. And so they want to talk about something or prioritize something, and the other side doesn't want to. You see this happen in Congress a lot too. Each political party has its priorities, its things that it's interested in. And also you have a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who are maybe in student government for the wrong reasons. They might not actually want to help students or represent them. They just like to fight with other people, or they like to have those kind of gamesmanship, or they just like to debate others for no reason, except for their own pleasure. And so you have that comes in as well. People being maybe in their roles for the wrong reasons, or not having the best kind of priorities themselves for what they'd like to do. And so I think a lot of what GAPSA has in terms of political infighting, that dysfunction that it creates, and the fact that we also have kind of an absent Congress. And you see that sometimes in Congress too, people not showing up, has led to the organization just not being able to function as well as I think it could. And so I think this referendum, though, will help us move past these things and why it's that exactly. So I think you can think about graduate and professional student governments as if there are very different kinds of structures. If you look at the undergraduate, the undergrads here and their student government system, they essentially have one organization that represents everyone. And if you look at the graduate school, they have one organization that pretty much represents everyone in graduate school, and that's called COGS. And COGS is a council within GAPSA. And then if you look at the professional side of things, the law school, the vet school, nursing, etc., MBA, you'll notice that they're very different. They're very segregated, and they're often their own little colleges and departments. They don't really speak to each other very often, and the student government that represents those students well are actually the councils within those colleges and programs. And so what GAPSA is trying to do right now is trying to both be MSA and also in a general sort of way that represents everyone, but also be able to specifically represent students who have very specific issues and concerns. And I think this has led to them not doing either one very well. You don't sometimes focus. You try to be all things to everyone. You won't be as effective at either one of those things. And MSA has done well because that's all they have to do. And COGS has done extremely well with graduate students. But GAPSA in terms of professional students, not so much, because it hasn't really worked with the councils as much as maybe it should. And so for this referendum, which is going forward, which would ask to split GAPSA into two organizations, essentially, we would have the COGS side and then the professional student side, which is made up of the smaller councils and the way that they're represented. I think we'll be able to focus on professional students better. We'll adapt this, what I'd like to do is adapt the structure of GAPSA so that it is more focused on the councils, focused on what can we do for the councils, listening to the councils, what concerns they hear on the front lines every day, what concerns might be unique to them, but also shared. That maybe GAPSA as a board, whatever we'll call the organization will be if this referendum passes, will be able to represent all professional students at the university and state and local government. And so I'd also like to do a few other things, not just listening better and focusing back on those councils in the advocacy sort of way, but also in the programmatic way. Right now we've got GAPSA trying to do some large events across the university from time to time that are open to all graduate and professional students. And I think if GAPSA actually instead focuses on trying to facilitate our councils and them putting on really great events for their students, that will be more successful in providing those programmatic things that students would like to see from their student government. But that doesn't mean that GAPSA shouldn't have any kind of programming necessarily. I think instead it should serve that facilitative role. So it might be facilitating helping a council put on a larger event than normal, using its larger resources, its funding, et cetera, to do that. Or maybe it's helping different councils work together. So maybe we want to, as has been talked about before, bring back the med school and law school together for a malpractice ball. And that's just one example. Now they're separate, they do it very separate, but it was a great opportunity back then for students in these different, very segregated, I hate to use the word segregated, but segregated colleges that don't ever really talk to each other, to come together and actually meet other people and have a good time with them. Which is great for professional students who go off into the working world and they know that networking and connections is very important for their own professional success. And so I think if we can facilitate those inter-council kinds of programming, we'll be more effective at fulfilling the programming needs that students would like to see fulfilled. And then lastly, I think that GAPSA can do a better job trying to provide resources that all councils need. So if we're focusing back on councils, what is it that every council needs? Every council needs marketing materials. Every council needs an online presence. Every council needs help structuring their budgets and their fees requests, which is what GAPSA was originally intended to do, which was to help with the fees requests and help ensure that councils are able to receive fees funding, which is very important to a lot of the councils in the programming that they do. And so I think if we can provide these resources better, we'll be doing a better job in the eyes of the councils. And overall, I hope that these three different areas, providing resources, helping with programming and facilitating that, and also listening better and doing better advocacy and outreach with these councils, I hope overall that brings professional student government together. Even though we are in these different colleges, I hope that we will start to feel as if we really are part of one organization, whereas now we feel very fractured. People feel like, what is GAPSA? What does it really mean to my council, et cetera? I think people feel a better sense of belonging, and ultimately student government will be strong. And so I look forward to telling you more about these themes if you have questions, and also in response to your own questions that we have prepared for tonight. I'd like to do a few other things as well, but those are my main things. I think this referendum is a great opportunity to focus on professional students, their councils, and ensure that professional student government is much more effective going into the future. And it's a challenge that I'm really excited to take on.
Yes. So you touched on it a little bit before when we were talking about your position in the MSA, but what really influenced you and your decision to specifically run for the president of the GAPSA?
Right.
It's like what influenced you to just make that leap?
So, I'll tell you what didn't influence me.
Okay.
And then I'll tell you a little bit about why I'm excited about it just on a personal level. As I said, there's a lot of great things that can be done. Just objectively, being a part of student government for 5 years now, obviously I always wanted to see it doing better. So that's kind of always on my mind, as anyone in student government will, I hope. There are some people who want to dissolve student government, but that's not. But I'll tell you why I don't want, a reason that didn't come up for when I'm running for GAPSA's president. And the reason that sometimes people run for this position or positions like it is that they want something that will help them get a job after graduation. They might see this as a resume builder. They might see it as something they can talk up with an employer about. They might see it as a way to gain those connections, especially, as I mentioned, professional students who know that connections are very important to their own professional and career success. And that's not why I'm doing this. Without being arrogant, I already have my employment lined up for after graduation. And so that's not part of what went into the calculus of why we run for this. And I think that's important. I've often said that people sometimes have asked me, friends and family, I'm sure everyone has had this experience, oh, you should run for some political position. Maybe it's like state senator, maybe it's United States senator, etc. And I say, I don't know if I'll do that until I'm 50 years old or something. Why? Because I want to have a good reason to run. I don't want to go just for politics' sake. I want to believe in something, feel passionately about it, and that's the reason that I should go there, because I believe that people who have a good reason for running for a position, who have a passion about something, will try to make the world a better place in that area. Whereas people who maybe don't have that passion might focus more on the politics and the gamesmanship of it all, and won't ever try to reach across the lines because they have nothing that they really care enough about to do so. And so I kind of am coming in at it with the passion that I've just gained and developed from being in student government, the passion to better represent students. I really love representing students. There have been a lot of positions over the years. I'd be happy to talk about those, but just take my word for it. And I don't know what there is about it, but I really like it. I also think, though, intrinsically, it could be a really rewarding experience because it's a big challenge. As I mentioned, a lot of people find GAPSA to be kind of dysfunctional and has kind of a reputation that needs some mending, unfortunately. And that's a big challenge, and I think it's kind of fun to have those grand challenges, as I keep saying, at the university. GAPSA is certainly one of them. And so I'm excited to take on something as large as this, and as complex as this, and as challenging as this, because I think it'll be a really rewarding experience personally, and I hope that it'll be rewarding for students as well in the resulting structure that we end up creating.
So, where do you see your personal strengths and weaknesses?
Sure. I think that one of my biggest weaknesses, I'll start with that, and hopefully I'll redeem myself with the strengths. One of my biggest weaknesses probably is that I have really high expectations for other people. As many people who know me can attest, if I get an email from them, they get a response usually very quickly, and I really care about that. That's just one example. But I guess when I do something, I expect other people to reciprocate or something like that. And I've come to recognize over time that that expectation is sometimes a little unrealistic. Other people have different priorities in life, or maybe they're good at other things that we're not good at, or whatever it might be. And so I've tried to overcome that weakness by having a better understanding, but also realizing and recognizing the important skill that is delegating. Sometimes students in student government or any student organizations just aren't going to be as involved as other people who are. Maybe we've all been on a group project where we've done more work than the other person, right? That can be like a student group sometimes. There are some people in the student group who do much more. Ultimately, you kind of need to have a little bit of both, but if you have people who aren't going to do as much as others, you need to be able to delegate to them. You need to understand how many people you then need. And so I think I've turned this kind of weakness into strength in a way of understanding how to respond to that, just for my own self. I think some of my other strengths kind of go along with this. I'm a very dedicated person. Maybe that's why I send the emails over and over again. As I said, I've been in student government now for 5 years, and in a variety of different roles. And I've always tried to do the very best job that I could. I think it's partially just like some duty that's been instilled in me by my parents somehow. Maybe it's the way that I grew up. But I just have a really deep sense of caring about things, a deep sense of duty, which I think is a strength in a role like this one, for sure. I think too, another strength that I have that maybe other candidates who are not part of this wouldn't maybe is, it goes again to that 5 years. I keep bringing it up, but I think it is important because I have a really extensive knowledge of how the university works, how policy formation and amendment works, and extensive knowledge of how student government works. And I think over time, I've developed a really strong understanding for how, why it is that it works a certain way or doesn't, or what is good about it and what's bad. And so I think that is a very important for a role like this, where you will ultimately have to make decisions about what to do going forward, how to lead the organization. You're going to have to know how student government functions, the other actors in the system, not just people in GAPSA, but in the other student government organizations as well, MSA, COGS, etc., Senate, R2R. And also we'll have to understand the best way to go about doing that. I think those are some of the strengths.
All right, can you discuss a couple of specific goals you have for this next year in graduate student government?
Right, absolutely. So I talked a little bit about this earlier, some of the 3 things I wanted to do. Some of the other specific goals that I would like to work on is improving GAPSA. We'll have to see what happens with this referendum. Maybe it will pass, maybe it won't. I really hope it does. And it's part of my platform. So maybe if that passes, I can count it as a first win. Maybe not. But if it doesn't pass, we really are going to have to work on the reputation of the organization. I think even if it does pass, that would be somewhat a challenge. Specifically, I think we're going to rebrand the organization. We're going to have to think about how we want to relay our brand to students. Right now, I think, as many students in the audience can probably attest, they receive just a ton of emails from the graduate and professional school and the Office for Student Affairs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It leads to this idea that GAPSA is really out of touch with what students need to know about. It leads to this idea what does GAPSA even do? It's this irrelevant organization that sends me things that I don't care about. We're going to have to work on how GAPSA is, what position it holds in the minds of our students. And so I guess specific things that we can do to improve on that are sending fewer emails, which probably sounds really trivial, but I think could be actually very important. I think too, we should work on ensuring that students actually know about us. I think I was talking to a student, a 1L recently, and they were like, oh yeah, GAPSA, and then they said it's that organization who sends me that email. But I don't really know what it is. And I was like, oh, well, what do you think it is? And they said, I think it's a department at the university, which is not true. We're very separate intentionally. And so that's a problem. I think something we need to work on. We can do that by obviously ensuring that when we send out materials that's actually very important and relevant to students and clearly about student government issues. Also by working with the councils, I think that will improve understanding. If we can ensure that people in student government actually know what GAPSA is, I guarantee you, I bet over half do. Don't really get it. If we can ensure that our student leaders start to understand what GAPSA is about, I think we'll be making some good strides for that. Also, one thing that I think could be incredibly important and a great way to establish a partnership with councils in the future is to ensure in every orientation material that a professional student gets, that it includes a little sheet, the top half or the bottom half or whatever, half of it is about GAPSA, or whatever we'll call the organization, if the referendum passes, and the other half is about their own council, the council that represents them in their own college or their program. I think, even colleges, even, or the councils even have problems trying to ensure that students know about them sometimes. And if we can get that going from the very beginning, when students are just learning about the university, help them find ways to get involved in student government too, I think we'll be doing a lot better job in ensuring that students know what GAPSA is about and that they can turn to GAPSA for help with any problems or concerns that they have. And so that's one specific thing I would like to do, helping improve the reputation of GAPSA, but that goes along with improving our communication, improving our branding, improving how we're reaching out to students.
So you touched on improving the image there. Do you have any plans on helping improve like the general visibility of GAPSA or its awareness to other students? I know you talked about you just talked about when students come in their orientation packet. Any other ideas you have about improving just the visibility of the general organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously those marketing materials are very important. I think too, one thing that I'd like to do and have some experience with is ensure that we have a central website hosting place for not just GAPSA, but all of its councils. I think every council does need a website, and they're all very different right now. And I think a lot of them have troubles updating it, their websites wherever they are. They want something simple. If we are bringing students to one place every time they want to learn about their own council, they'll also be learning about GAPSA, which I think is a great way to do that. Going to some of your other questions, I think focusing the organization on professional students will help over time. But also in focusing, I think if we can kind of be more of a facilitator than someone who actually puts on programs, we'll be able to get our brand out there more too, as seems to be the trend. Every time GAPSA gives funds to something, that organization will also kind of rep GAPSA as being the source of those funds, which helps. But also I think in focusing down on very specific advocacy efforts, maybe having, I think if anyone was watching last week, President Kaler was in this very spot actually, and talked about what he thought student government should do next year, a question that I submitted online. And he said, focus on one or two things. I think if we can really focus on one or two things and do a really great job with it, students will recognize that, they'll be aware of what we are doing, we'll get more press, I think obviously we'll end up doing some things that will that are in kind of promoting what advocacy issues we're working on that will help ensure that students are passionately engaged on those issues too. Kind of like MSA is doing right now. Maybe a lot of us know about MSA probably because of just how much sexual assault kind of awareness and outreach and all the things that they're doing this year has absolutely improved the visibility of that organization. And right now, the number of people who are running for spots on MSA is 3 times the number it was last year. So I think focusing on something can be a really strong way to increase visibility, because then students recognize that if you're doing a really good job of something, you're obviously representing them well. It's very, kind of everything's connected, and do all these things right, visibility.
So now I know you've touched on it a little bit tonight and within your opening statement as well, but can you discuss the proposed referendum between COGS and PSA just a little bit deeper, specifically focusing on the potential impact and the practical impact it will have on the lives of everyday graduate and professional students?
Absolutely. So again, like I mentioned earlier, it just splits the, I said it split the organization. That might not have been the most accurate. Essentially what would happen is, as I said, GAPSA encompasses all of these councils. We have all these professional councils, and then we have the one massive graduate student council. So they would essentially they would exit the organization, and they would then be their own organization, which they are now, but in a sense, kind of the highest authority in terms of representing graduate students, which they are not. And so that changes some things for graduate students. It's been much talked about, whether or not COGS should have a general student election for their president, just like GAPSA does, because they will now have someone representing all of them in one organization, which is different because previously GAPSA's president would represent them, and that was elected through the student body. And so that might affect graduate students in terms of their representation. Right now, it's more of a parliamentary system. But COGS itself has done a very good job over time representing the interests of graduate students, I think. I went to one of their meetings to talk about my campaign, and I realized how well they function. They have a good number of representatives who are very passionate about many topics from the different schools, essentially graduate schools across the university. So that's not going to impact graduate students very much this change. Professional students, hopefully, if the referendum passes and I get elected and bring these changes, and I hope they work out as well as I'd like them to, hopefully graduate or professional student lives will be better. Hopefully. Hopefully we'll have more inter-council events. Hopefully more funding will go towards the councils. Hopefully students will be more engaged in student government generally, and hopefully that leads us, all these things will lead to better advocacy efforts, which means that professional student voices are more strongly represented. Right now, for example, we really don't have a lot of professional student voice in the upper echelons of the university. So we have, reps to the board of regents. 4 of them come from our university. Currently, 3 of them are undergrads. 1 of them is a graduate student. We do not have a professional student, and we haven't had a professional student in that position for a good number of years, actually, more than 4 years. And so with this change, we'll ensure that we always have someone there, which is extremely important, very vital, because those reps have the ability to change the conversation at the board of regents level. That's just one major change. Obviously, also, the organization will be focused on representing professional students. There will be 1 professional student voice across all the councils, which I think will be a little different. It might improve the lives of professional students when they're arguing or advocating for things like tuition fees, which they did do this year, which is very important to professional students, not as important to graduate students who don't really pay tuition, generally speaking, but very important to professional students. And so I think that organization will be able to focus on those kinds of advocacy efforts, which will improve, hopefully, the likelihood that we actually end up getting more funding for our professional programs like the med school has had success with recently. And hopefully the other professional programs will have the same success if we are organized the way I would hope us to be in the future.
All right, perfect. That's all the prepared questions I have. I'll give you time for a closing statement, and then we'll move into a question and answer session if anyone has questions that they would like to have for Kyle. So as he's giving his closing statement, think of any that you would like to ask him, and the mic is just right up there as well. So I'll give you time to do just maybe like a 3-minute closing statement, just about just wrapping up some general.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for all the questions, and thank you everyone for listening and coming. I wanted to tell you actually a little story, which is that before I went to law school, I was a student here at the University of Minnesota in the policy school, and I studied business. And after I graduated, I kind of wanted to, before I knew I was going to law school here at the UW, I was very excited for it. But before I came here, I wanted to try to do something I'd never done before, which is to lead an actual organization in a workplace. And that's, we all have, as students, a lot of experiences meeting people in student groups and on campus. But to do it in a workplace kind of brings it to a new level of seriousness. And it's more difficult too, in some respects. And so I actually ended up, I'm from the Greater Lakes area. And so I went up there and I was able to get a job supervising a fine dining restaurant, which is something I didn't really have a lot of experience with. And while maybe you thought I was going to talk about leadership this entire time, I'm not. I'm going to change the subject a little bit. When I learned really important things about leading other people, leading professionals. These people are professionals because it was a fine dining restaurant. These people actually, this is their kind of career, serving people with really nice food and providing great service. So it was very serious. It wasn't like a typical restaurant. So I learned about those things, which I think will be very helpful for me as president, that I can bring in hopefully as a leader of this larger organization. But I also learned about something a little unexpected, which was wine. And fine dining restaurant always has wine, but this particular restaurant had a 2,000 bottle wine cellar. And wine was really kind of the highlight of the restaurant, was almost the most important thing, because an entire length of the restaurant was this wine cellar, which had glass, and you could see all 2,000 bottles in the wine cellar as when you were in the restaurant. It was beautiful. And the name of the restaurant was Cru, and it's still there today. I encourage you to go. Right? Cru is a French term that means vintage. It's aptly named because it's speaking to the wine vintages that they have. And you could actually walk into this wine cellar. And I knew when I started the job that I didn't know anything about wine, actually. And I knew that I was going to have to. So I started learning as much as I could. I took level 1 of the sommelier educational courses. I learned just in looking things up myself. I investigated all sorts of little debates that are still going on in the wine community, which is interesting. I learned about stories about great California wines, French wines, and I learned about all the different varietals, both red and white. In fact, just today, my brother was asking me, what Zinfandel should I get at the store? And I was going through all, well, where's it from? I learned about where the best kinds of varietals come from. I learned about all these things. And then I started, as I became more and more knowledgeable about wine, I started to develop an understanding about not just what it is, but how do you pair it with other food? How do you talk about it? How do you sell it? How do you describe it? How do you talk with guests about it and tell them about the wine? And how do you essentially represent the wine really well to an outsider? And I think that my time in student government is very similar. I've been in student government for 5 years now, and I came in at the university. I didn't really know very much about student government. I got involved really quickly on campus. I learned about a large number of things. I was on the Student Service Fees Committee. I learned about 70 student groups. I investigated a large variety of issues. Every year I've been in student government. I've passed resolutions on things that I've investigated, just like I investigated the wine. And I've developed a really large amount of knowledge about the university and about student government. And I think likewise, in developing, in having that knowledge, I've developed an understanding not only about wine, but also about how student government functions, and I think where it needs to go. And my only reason in telling you this, maybe to tell you a little bit about myself, but to say that I think my knowledge and understanding will provide me with a lot of the tools that I need to ensure that GAPSA thrives in the future and hopefully turns around its reputation and better represents students. Thank you, everyone, for all your time.
Thank you. All right, does anyone have any questions that they like have?
I think, is this,
Maybe I have to turn it on.
okay, is this, whatever.
No, it's on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you've done a pretty good job of discussing how you would represent professional students, but if the referendum doesn't go through, I believe that as president, you would still be representing graduate students as well. And I was wondering if you would just speak to how you would do that, because I think you spoke a lot to your ability to represent professional end of things as a professional student yourself. And so I'm just curious if either, one, you're very confident that the referendum will pass, which perhaps you are, or how you would represent graduate students and work with COGS and still try to overcome that barrier between graduate and professional students you were talking about earlier.
Absolutely, thank you for the question. I am pretty optimistic that the referendum will pass. There's a lot of support, and there's very few people I know who are against it. In fact, I don't even know anyone who's against it. I just know that they're out there. A few people. And so I feel confident. But there is that possibility. What happens if the referendum doesn't pass? Well, there's a sense in which maybe we still split it off, even if it doesn't pass. Some people have argued that the referendum is somewhat of a formality because it has already been approved by everyone in student government. So that would be I would first assess the situation. How badly do we want this? How badly do we need it? And how many professional councils would be on board, even though students might not have voted for splitting it up. And maybe part of the consideration will be, well, did it not pass because not enough people voted on the issue? As you know, you need to have a majority of voters. Well, what if somebody doesn't vote on that question? They just skip over it. It's an abstention vote, but it counts as a no vote. And so maybe we say, well, the people who voted were overwhelmingly in favor, but we had some abstentions, we'll go ahead with it anyway. So these are things we'll have to deal with. Now, if for some reason we decide not to go ahead and do that, I think actually a lot of the things I've spoken about in terms of professional student councils can be applied really well to the graduate school as well. I was actually sitting on the Campus Connector a few weeks ago. I was right across from Andrew McNally, who's the president of COGS, and I said, Andrew, why is it that why is it that there's this division among graduate professionals? Why is it that COGS and GAPSA just don't get along very well? Because it's largely the problem. COGS and GAPSA fighting. And he said, really? I think it kind of has to do with the leadership we've had. He said, when I first came here and was first involved in COGS, one of the presidents of GAPSA came up to me and told me that they just didn't like graduate students and that their goal was to fight with the current president. They said, really? That's crazy. As a leader who's somebody who's supposed to have COGS within their organization, lead COGS, I mean, that's quite a statement to make. And I think it set a lot of negative tones. And I've heard that for about a decade now, this has been the case, that these people in GAPS's leadership or whatever, leadership in COGS have been at odds for whatever personal reasons. Obviously, as I mentioned, there are differences in terms of interest among these students, but I have a feeling a lot of it comes down to personality. So I'm not that kind of person. I'm very open to still working with COGS, and I feel actually just going along the campaign trail that I've been able to develop some positive relationships with them too. And I think just like any other council, I mean, they're a very large one, to be sure. I think they're like 9,000 students, which is way larger than state of Washington, which is around 700 students. And so they're maybe more, they're larger financially, et cetera, they have bigger problems. But I think like any council, they need things that the other councils do too. They need help with finances. I was talking to the person who helped prepare the fees requests, and they said they spent over, I think it was $75. I tell you that's not going to be the case at Ryan President. I'm very familiar with the process, and I'm happy to help provide those resources so they don't have to go alone. As well, just like other councils might want to increase their presence and their visibility and their marketing, I think GAPSA can help with that, but it just hasn't done those things yet. I think we come at it with the attitude like, we are here to help you, because by helping you, student government overall is better off. We help ourselves in a sense, and we can do better advocacy at the university and at the state and national level. I think we come in with that attitude, we can be a more cohesive group than we are. But ultimately, we may end up still needing to make structural changes, because half the time there's an issue that COGS students care really a lot about, and maybe professional students don't care about it. And that leads to the quorum problems that we're having. So maybe we'll still have to make some structural changes. Maybe it's COGS doesn't get 21 or 18 or whatever. It's a large number of spots on GAPSA's assembly. Maybe they, like every other council, will have one or two, like a kind of a Senate instead of a House kind of legislative body. And so I think we would have to talk about those things. And I think there might be support for that going forward. I've thought about all these things. I look forward to seeing what happens, but ultimately, I really do hope it passes. I encourage everyone who's going to vote this year to vote for it, and if not, we'll do the best we can. Thank you. That's probably a very long question or answer to your question, but it's a very difficult and complex one. Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Kroll. I think I speak for everybody here when I just want to say thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I know the life of a law student is a busy one, and I'll keep this brief. I just have a few questions I'd like to ask you.
One at a time.
Certainly, of course. Senator Kroll, is it true that the majority of persons in the audience today are your personal friends and acquaintances?
I didn't understand what you said.
Isn't it true that the majority of persons in the audience today are your personal friends and acquaintances?
We could take a straw poll. I think what I would spin that as is, I'll do this question. How many people in the audience support my presidency? I think that's almost everyone. So there's a lot of supporters, and I count many people as my friend.
Sir. Given that straw poll, what are your thoughts on cronyism in student government?
Oh, geez. Cronyism. Can you point out an example of what you've seen, how that has come up?
Well, Senator, I don't have any personal examples offhand. I just wouldn't want to see anything start with this administration or any other.
Sure. Well, we obviously I'm opposed to cronyism. I don't know if it comes up in state government as much. I've said on a couple of occasions that I believe that the president of GAPSA should be more of a unitary executive perhaps that kind of a structure would lead to greater cronyism if you had an unscrupulous individual in the office. But as it is right now, actually, quite a few positions and quite a few decisions regarding the use of funds are voted on by everyone. And so I think the potential actually for cronyism is very low.
So you think there's sufficient safeguards currently?
Yeah, I think I do. There were some accusations earlier this year that called into question whether or not individuals who are on the GAPSA executive board had gone to a conference had embezzled money in somewhat of an indirect way, and which you know probably falls under this, you know, and it's had to be proven, and those all proved to be false. Actually, there are still somebody might still argue that you know the way they use the funds is not really something they agree with, but ultimately it's an acceptable use of funds. And so, you know, depending on your perspective, you might think there are controls in place, but I think the way we do it, there are. I would like to say though that I do want to. This goes along with providing this important financial resources to the council. I do want to put in strong policies that ensure that we don't open ourselves up to those kinds of financial accusations or potentially even liabilities. And I think we can do that with a new VP of Finance, which will be GAPSA will elect, hopefully coming up in May. Again, that might depend on how the Constitution changes or whatever as a result of the referendum. But I actually do want to put in stronger checks and balances on that. So it's a good question.
Your discussion of that allegation is actually a good segue into my next question.
Oh, great.
Senator, given that you circulated no email amongst the law school community and the current number of persons in this room in the audience, numbers less than a half dozen, what are your thoughts on transparency in student government?
I think well, obviously I'm for it. You know, I've actually I'm the author of a current Senate resolution in which we ask for the Student Senate, which brings together essentially all the student government organizations. Would give the Student Senate what I call review power, which is the ability to essentially kind of, I hate to use this word because I hope no one in the administrative office listens, but kind of like legislatively veto things. And so kind of stop a policy amendment or new policy in its tracks before it is enacted that might negatively affect students when students really disagree with it. So I really do think transparency is important. And when obviously the angle I'm coming at it is it's the university being transparent with students. And transparency for student government, I think, is important too. One thing that I'm really impressed with Law Council did this year, they have opened up, they have used Google Drive very well, Google Docs, to ensure that all students have access to all of their meeting minutes, all of their agendas. They have access to materials that are being talked about in different committees at the law school itself. That's something I'd like to see every council do, hopefully, if it can, and that I'd like to see GAPSA do better too. It's not actually very transparent right now. If you wanted to try to find a copy of the budget, it would be very hard for you as a student to do so. I don't think it should be as hard. And so I am 100% for transparency, but I think the best way to increase that transparency is just to make everything that we do very accessible to whoever wants to find it. And that hopefully will be primarily through an online portal or website or something. Because I think that is a very natural, easy way to ensure that students have access to that.
And certainly a laudable. You mentioned a lot during your remarks today that you're a very passionate person and you have quite a bit of experience as a representative to various bodies. What do you have in terms of executive experience given the nature of the presidency?
That's a great question. Well, I've said to people, this is a great challenge. I've never been at the top of student government before, but I have been near it. I was represented to the board of regents. I was a ranking rep, and so I was on the executive board for undergraduate student government. I ran my own little mini department. Granted, it wasn't very large, but when you're leading leaders, it can be really difficult. I find that in law school, that's kind of the case a little bit. And I've maybe not done a lot of executive things in law school, but I have led other leaders, which I think executives do very often. And I think law students are all leaders, or at least most of them I do. In the Tort Theater production, which is a musical group, a student musical that's put on every year at the law school that students are involved with. And I was a stage manager and now a tech director, which I guess is an executive role. And that involves leading a group of people, also leading people who aren't even really in your department, so to speak, people who are just part of the organization generally. As I've said, I've got that professional experience actually working at a restaurant that was fine dining, where people took it very seriously. It's not obviously the same as student government, but I think there are a lot of corollaries. And when I was an undergraduate student, I also was a project manager at United Health Group, one of the largest companies in the world, and helped run some of their projects. And I think what I need to say by giving you all these examples is that I believe I do have the skills and experiences needed to transition into this position well, to lead it well, to the other leaders who are within it and will be within it. And but I'm by no means a perfect person. I will learn a lot along the way. I really do believe in. I've said, this may be cliche, and I've said it on, in cover letters, but it's absolutely true. I do consider myself a lifelong learner. When I have a belief or a position on something, and then I find out that there's some piece of evidence that says that maybe I'm not really right about it, I'm actually very willing to change my perspective. And that happens to me from time to time, just like it would anyone. And so I think as we go along and as I learn, you think better too, I think I'll be the kind of leader that will learn from any mistakes that I've committed, and hopefully become the executive that professional students deserve.
Senator, I'm glad you mentioned your experience working in this restaurant you mentioned. I believe it was upstate for a bit. And it's my understanding that's where you developed a love of wine. Is that right?
Did I what? Sorry?
You developed a love of wine?
Yes.
Appreciation?
Yeah, there's a great Italian phrase about that. I don't remember, but it involves the word vino. I don't remember what it is. Do you know?
I'm afraid I don't know, man. But then I was never a wine person.
I would say that I am more of I love wine more than most people do. But I think what I mean is that I appreciate it. I'm not, by any means, do not misconstrue that statement to mean that I drink wine.
But certainly not, Senator, and I would make no such allegations. How old were you at the time you worked this job, and what are your thoughts on perhaps the most pervasive problem on this campus, underage drinking?
Oh, that's a great question.
And I'll ask the answer those in turn, please.
Sure. So I was 20. Let's see. So I'm 23. So I was 21 when I worked at this restaurant. So I could legally drink wine. And that's the first question. The second question is underage drinking. It is really a good question, but it really isn't that applicable to professional student government. So I actually don't think it's very pressing from our perspective. It may be very pressing for undergraduate student government. And I would just say that, to a certain extent, there will always be people who will want to drink, as I'm sure that's to in his occupation as a community advisor. No matter how much you educate them, no matter what the consequences are in a sense. And so you won't be able to curb it completely. But I do like what the U has done in kind of ensuring that all students have, I don't remember what they call it, it's like some kind of online module they have to do, which talks about the professions, etc. Make sure everyone's on the same playing field in terms of education at all. And they've thought about doing this not just for that, but for sexual assault, what things you watch out for if you see a friend who's in a precarious situation, don't just be a bystander, things like this, which I think could be, that apply obviously also to professional students and would be probably a good addition to orientation. So I've created this, taken this question and segued it into something that's very applicable, and I would be in support. I'm not in support of underage drinking. I'm in support of the non-alcohol. Just to be clear.
Thank you for clarifying, Senator.
Yes.
What would you say, or how would you say it reflects on GAPSA and the office for which you're running, the fact that you're running unopposed in this election?
Well, I'd like to think that it means that everyone was too afraid to go against me or something. They thought they would lose. But I don't know if that's true. It could reflect the fact that GAPSA has had this kind of poor reputation, or just hasn't been as effective. It's got really good people within the organization. People do a really good job and try really hard. And I wish that the fruits of their labor would be greater than they are. And so it's kind of it's unfortunate given the strong amount of talent that GAPSA has. But I think it just does really reflect these things. And last year, of course, there were the accusations that were made, and there was the investigation. This is cast doubt on whether or not GAPSA is a very responsible organization. And so that hurts it. Also, the dwindling level of involvement means that there aren't leaders who are rising through the organization. I was involved in GAPSA this year through the Law Council, representing them at GAPSA meetings. And so I've kind of seen that firsthand. And I've seen the low level of involvement from some of the other councils. And I think that's something we need to work on. And maybe it just reflects some of the problems that are plaguing our own councils, which are, for example, Brad said, which has like 5 members. Just that, because it should have many. And I think that I'm probably right about this. The reason why, because last year the person, my understanding is the president of GAPSA, currently Alfonso Santiago, also ran unopposed, although there was an extensive writing campaign against him, which I do not encourage. And so I think this has been going on for a little while. So hopefully I can turn around, and hopefully next year we'll have multiple people interested in the position.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Senator.
thank you for your question.
Well, I have one last question.
One more.
I believe you mentioned it at one point that one goal of your administration would be a sort of decrease the volume of emails sent to students.
Hopefully.
Senator, on April 2nd of this year, the body of Jennifer Houle was recovered from the Mississippi River. It's believed she may have jumped from the 10th Avenue Bridge into the river. Certainly mental health is a crisis, especially amongst professional students where the stress and expectations are higher. Where would you say mental health care fits into your priorities for your planned administration?
So I think I agree with you. It's obviously very important. But I would say that it's not a priority necessarily for what I would like to do with GAPSA. That might strike you as something that no candidate should ever say. They say you should always make a promise. I think the plan that I have already is quite a lot to take on. I think that if we can develop these better relationships with councils, we might be better at communicating the important information that students need to know. And through that, I think we will end up sending out from time to time some information about mental health resources. So instead of you getting an email all the time and the mental health resources stuff maybe is at the bottom every time, and no one ever gets through it because nobody opens emails, which is a completely ineffective system. Some people read emails among them, but very few of us do. We would send out maybe fewer emails that people actually want to open, that actually very succinctly, I mean very, present the information that students need to know so that they're actually seeing everything they need to know. And not just getting constantly bombarded with maybe information about mental health resources, and then it kind of becomes like this you're kind of like preaching to the choir, you hear it all the time. It doesn't have a strong impact on ensuring that students actually know these things. And so, although it's not a very big focus of what I'd like to do in terms of like let's create a bunch of mental health resources, I think some of the things that I would like to do could potentially increase awareness of the resources that we already have, which are very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
All right, thank you for everything being here.
Maybe potentially.
Yes, we don't have time for another one. Sorry about that.
Senator Kroll, thank you first off for spending time with us tonight. My name is Chris. I'm a second-year student, one of your classmates over at the law school. And you've answered a lot of tough questions tonight and tackled a lot of tough, difficult issues that you plan on facing as president. But I had a lighter question about your passion for wine. I'm a California native, and so
okay.
I just was curious, what is your favorite wine and why?
Ooh, good question.
So a lighter question.
I was hoping I would get the what your favorite color, but I like the what is your favorite wine. My answer is it depends. It depends on what you're eating, because I care about hair. But if I'm not eating anything, which maybe is the truest, what is your favorite, as we just like about itself, I would probably say, for a while, like my first year of law school, I think it was Sauvignon Blanc. It's really nice. New Zealand, Marlborough region. If it's in the $8 to $12 range, that's a good one. And then, sorry, not from California. I think now though, I kind of lean towards kind of Moscatos and oh gosh, I'm blanking, not Gewürztraminer, German wine that's sweet. Can't remember, but for some reason I'm blanking. It's probably from Scotland. If I had to choose a red though, I'd go with Zinfandel, and it's certainly buy it from California. Great, Zinfandel from California. Thank you. Oh, I hope I answered the question. I guess I like sweeter ones as well. These are sweeter, or except for Sauvignon Blanc, which has sweeter. But it's spicier and more acidic. Riesling. Thank you very much. Yeah, I love a good Riesling from Germany, or maybe even Austria. Although the Austrian Rieslings tend to be a little drier, not as sweet. But I like the sweetness. They're good. Yeah. All right, thanks for the question.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time, Kyle. We can wrap up there.
Thank you for having me.
All right, awesome.
Making me laugh at the beginning.
All I did was look at you.
Yeah, right. Thank you for coming.